Moving forward a little bit, can you share with us a little bit about your game plan and your strategy for going about programming your concerts? I know oftentimes quartets will have, an early Beethoven or Mozart or Haydn quartet to start, and they'll kind of lean into like more romantic like Mendelssohn or Schubert, and then end with like a 20th century, whether it be Bartok or Shostakovich. Is that something you guys kind of subscribe to, or do you guys try to think a little bit more outside that?
Well, I think for us, there's so much great quartet music that we actually basically all have the same tastes and love the same pieces because there is so much good stuff. The only
Mhm,
hard part is eliminating stuff and then kind of coming up with a theme for a program because our
mhm,
management requests that each year we come up with two main programs that have themes. But in all honesty, we
mhm,
come up with the music we're passionate about first and then make a way to tie it together with a paragraph kind of describing it, a title and something that can really sell the program. And that begins
mhm,
with what we call the ender. So usually that's like a heavy hitting quartet for us by
mhm,
Beethoven or Schubert or Brahms, something that's for us very meaty, but full of infinite possibilities. We do tend to like to program some of the hardest pieces ever, and maybe in future seasons we'll chill a little bit with that
mhm,
once we get through all the repertoire. But there's so many Beethovens, especially to go through, that that's
mhm,
going to be a while.
mhm,
And then for us, like building around the ender once we pick that. Generally, we think of it a little bit like a meal, going back to food, how you have the
mhm,
appetizer, like you were saying, a Mozart or a Haydn is a great kind of, you know, way to whet your palate. Although those pieces deserve credit, and it's really fun, like when you get to play Mozart as an ender too, because like then everything is like flipped. So, for instance, like we also had a program recently where we played 59-1 and Schubert G major on the same program, which a lot of people would
mhm,
think is nuts, but those were our two enders for this season, and getting to play them in the same program was pretty surreal too. And then
mhm,
inevitably, you'll have collab pieces, so a lot of times the last piece will get subbed with a piano quintet or
mhm,
viola quintet, or sometimes a whole program of quintets, which is also really fun. Or like at Rice, we got the request to play Nielsen. Some presenters are more open to modern music than others. So generally, we try to have something contemporary on the program, usually kind of the middle, like that's where we throw in the thing that the audience might not be expecting, but we
right,
want them to be blown away and want to hear more.
mhm,
And it really depends. There's still pushback from certain audiences that just are not, open to it, and that's
mhm,
their right. But we try to, especially we've had a lot of success with our first commission piece by Kareem Alzand through a grant from Chamber Music America. Kareem is a wonderful composer and theory professor, and he incorporates a lot of older music tropes with this kind of
mhm,
tongue-in-cheek aspect to the music, and audiences have loved it. We played it over 30 times
mhm,
across the UK and the US, and
mhm,
people have gone nuts for it and said it was their favorite piece on the program. Same thing at Banff competition, we played a piece by Derek Bramell called Intonations. That's like this kind of sampling of Americana, and uses the string quartet to play blues harmonica and even funk and hip hop beats in the last movement. And
mhm,
that piece also just like blew people's minds, and they were like, "This is the favorite piece that we heard
mhm,
from any group in the competition." So that's what you want, is to really expand people's tastes. But we put a lot of effort into finding contemporary pieces that are both satisfying to our curiosities and that we'll be
mhm,
passionate about putting a lot of time into and stretch ourselves, but also people can still relate to.
mhm,
Yeah, I think maybe one of the things that, in school, your teachers push you to like really be creative with how you program. And there's a kind of reality, especially when you're a standard rep quartet, which is kind of what we are. We like mostly are known for playing the standards, the Romantic era,
mhm,
maybe like through Bartok and Haydn, Mozart, like all the stuff that's like pretty normal, strict classical music. And we have all these things that we love to learn. We've played so much modern music. We probably played an equal amount of modern music to the standard rep that we've also played. But there kind of is not actually a ton of presenters that really are going to go and be down with a program that's like 90% modern music. And I think one of the struggles we've had kind of coming out of school and being professional musicians touring is how do we curate a program so that not only does a presenter want it, but like an audience wants to be there and there's a story or a kind of uh, not an event out of it, but something, an experience that people want to go see. And you see it a lot with younger groups nowadays, including us. Like we're constantly working to really frame these programs and make them something that where you can't really switch out pieces. Like the presenter's going to want it no matter what. And I think our first 2 years of picking programs, we kind of stuck with really standard rep, trying to grow our rep, while also kind of pushing the boundary with a few of the modern pieces we picked and getting commissions. And that allowed us to kind of see the range of like how the industry works. And we mostly focused in on making sure there was always a narrative in the like programs we're picking, and that like
Mm.
you could almost pitch it within like 2, 3 sentences, and a presenter's gonna want the modern piece no matter what because it fits it so well. We have a
Mm.
program we're touring with this year with Kurtog, Six Moments Musico, Haydn the Bird, and Schubert G, and it's called Radiant Heights is the
Mm.
title of the program. And it like ties in everything. And like even when we're giving that concert, we always kind of frame the Kurtog in a way that the audience is actually experiencing it in a way that's more gonna set them up for the Schubert. It's like opening their ears up.
Mm.
They have a little appetizer with the bird, and it's like looking at a Rothko when you actually get to that Kurtog, and it kind of like
Mm.
lets you understand like what the expression in music can be. It's avant-garde in its own way, and like how that narrative of Schubert kind of threw in like the kind of bird sounds and nature that you hear through the whole program
Yeah.
is really highlighted, I think, makes the program need to exist as a whole. And it's been funny like seeing like how many times it's been actually subbed out. Because like it's so every time we play it, the audience like is like the Kurtov was the best thing. Like that
Mhm.
was so great. I can't believe like I've never heard that composer before. But
Mhm.
it's subbed out really often. We've played like a few concerts now that with the 59-1 Schubert on the same program. We've
Mhm.
even done a couple with like Haydn the Bird, 59-1 and Schubert G major, which is like a huge concert for an audience.
Yeah.
It's like we love doing that kind of stuff. It's like the old school programming from back in the day, and that's kind of how we
Mhm.
started out. And it's like it's interesting to see how creative you have to be to really push the edge. And the programs we have coming up for the coming years, because we program at least 2 years out, kind
Mhm.
of have taken this into account. And it's we've been having to be more creative with how we fit things in, where a modern piece fits. How much can we actually fit in? How do you use commissions to help sell a program and kind of also tie in different things? And we even have a program in the future we're hoping like to actually have the meat and potatoes be like a modern work and like really get presenters to get behind it. And
Yeah.
that's like a whole project in its own. And even when you consider like albums and whatnot,
That's
it's a
nice.
whole undertaking. Like when you really think about how to sell it and get people to want to show up.
I think as we play more of these programs that we've sort of curated and like thought about the storyline of, I think as we've been able to play them, we're more able to understand too, like sort of the actual experience and through line of an entire work or entire
Mm.
program.
Mhm.
And so I think each year our programming gets like a little better, having experienced like how much actually putting these pieces together, like that Haydn and Kurtog and Schubert program, like seeing what programming can do. Because I think a lot of the effects are almost things you would never even imagine. Because you know that we put that together basically based on like, well, the Six Moments Musico is based on Schubert, and like there's like a bird movement in that, and Schubert also has like a song called "The Bird." Like
It was really
it
loose.
starts out with some like loose connections, and then you find out like actually like Haydn sets the stage for like this is string quartet, and then
Mhm.
you have this like palate cleansing or just kind of like very like smaller or not small, very different like sound world that you kind of enter, and it gets
Yeah.
people listening in a completely different way, and then it actually gets people to hear super G major and maybe in a way that they never would have imagined they would have.
Yeah.
And so that kind of like, I wouldn't say it's a side effect, but like that kind of like learning that kind of effect that you can have really changes how we think about programming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just kind of tying it back to programming a little bit, because I understand Angela and Justin, you guys go back and forth between who plays first and second, right? So when you guys program, how do you guys decide who plays which part?
So Justin had mentioned like when we have the two main recitals, we have the enders.
Hmm.
So based on our past repertoire, we just kind of go off. We actually have a rough draft of like how to divide up the Beethovens, for example, because it has a set
Mm,
number, and we wanted to divide up the middle, early, late in like equal-ish manner.
yeah.
So the next Beethoven, I'm gonna play with the 135, and then he's gonna play the Smetna, and then the rest
Hmm.
just kind of fits in. This all started with like it's all like coincidental in a way. Like we started with Beethoven. He said 127 earlier, but we actually couldn't play that at school, so we played 59-2 instead.
Hmm.
And they had asked me, which part do you want to play? And thinking that I was only gonna be with these guys for like a semester, and knowing that they were all great musicians, I was like, I mean, why not play a Beethoven quartet on first? Because I had never played a Beethoven quartet before, like with like three really good guys, and I just like learn how to play first violin. Why not? So I
Hmm.
did that, and then the next piece they were like, oh, how about Bartok four? And I really didn't know a lot about the Bartok quartets, and I was like,
Hmm.
Bartok four, sure. And then I was like, Justin, your turn. Like, like it was so like so natural because like why you know what I mean? Like we didn't sit
Yeah.
down to be like, all right, we're going to be a professional quartet and this is our
Right.
game plan. It was just kind of like we were exploring music, who cares who plays what kind of thing. So a lot of our beginning thing kind of started that way. So then the next piece
Mhm.
I took it and then Justin took it and then during the competition years like we balanced out the rounds. So, we would have one romantic pieces each or like we would if we
Mm,
have two pieces we'd make sure both are presented just things like that. And then now we have a pattern of like if there are two like if there's like a piano quintet that I played 5 years ago, let's say, or 10 years ago, then I'll just like pick
mm,
that up or balance
mm.
it out by program kind of thing. And sometimes it ends up being like one person plays the whole recital on first, and it like doesn't
Okay.
really um, but yeah, we don't have like a really good system. We don't have like a system that's like all like
Sure.
structured out at all.
Right. 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 No, but I mean, I just find that so curious because I mean, so much of the string quartet literature, especially early on with like, the classical era and up until like the early Beethovens, the first violin really kind of took charge. So it's hard, I'm sure, to go from that to, something else where so it's good that you guys are balancing it out. So that
Yeah.
must be good. Yeah.
To talk
Yeah.
about like what affects the group, like
I,
sounds like a whole thing.
well,
Well, I will say that in a way, while we have very different personalities and it does affect the group, it's
Hmm.
just because somebody's playing first violin doesn't mean that the group has any more or less say as a whole. Like everything
Right.
is a real collaborative effort. The interpretations are always built on by the like the whole. So, and that's the reason why we say it doesn't matter because it's not like the first violinist is going to have that much more say in the rehearsal
Sure.
process no matter who it is. But there are differences that everybody's playing does kind of change based off of that. There's going to be inevitable, just like different vibes going on for sure. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think the main thing I'm thinking is like when we had done a couple competitions, I think when we showed up to Borciani in Italy, we were kind of treating the quartet as the switching didn't matter at all, and that
Mm,
we were the same group in both ways. And
yeah.
even like we had borrowed instruments from the ruining shop, and we hadn't even like taken into account like how they sound when they switch. We were just like,
Mm,
like we get to like go to this shop and like pick out some instruments that are like way better than what we have. Find something that's like, like they were super generous, but like
It's like
the
steroids.
problem was like we
yeah.
show up like the like week or like I think I don't Borciani was weird
It
because it
was
was still the
very
pandemic, so it was like the week we were leaving for Italy before the first round. They had to pick instruments to show up to the competition with, and like, I mean, for anyone, that's like I mean, we were playing on some nice stuff too on loan from our teachers, so we had it for a little bit longer, but that was like our first real experience, like figuring out like, oh my God, when you get these like super instruments next to each other and then they switch violins, how insane the changes in a quartet. And you start to really see like how personality and like who's playing what really matters. And by the time we did the Banff competition, we were like starting to think about that a little bit. We still went for comfort, and like we spent like 4 hours kind of like deciding like like how we were going to take out instruments, if we were going to take them out, how much it was going to affect the group, if like I borrowed a viola or if he borrowed a cello, like is it worth it, should we keep the same setup, like how much is it going to change. And then once we kind of stopped doing competitions, we really went into like, well, when Angela's on first, we're a totally different group. When Justin's on first, we're a totally different group. And like that was actually figured out from just having played nicer instruments in many ways and getting feedback as a group. Because like we still play on basically the same stuff we've played on since we started the group. Except I think Justin has a violin on loan for like another year. And like we basically have figured out like you have to rehearse totally differently, and you have to listen totally differently. You play stylistically totally differently depending on who's on first. And it's like that took us like 5 years to figure out like how important that distinction was, especially with growth, like really understanding how to highlight a first violinist, let them be first voice, how to play inner voices was like a totally crazy thing. And like one big element, I mean, we started it before the pandemic a little bit, but we started doing Bach chorales like almost religiously. That's very sounds like fun. But we started using the Bach chorales as like a tool to learn how to communicate and understand how voicing in the quartet actually works. And I mean, it's like we still spend like at least an hour a day doing them, and it's not for like to perform them, but it's like how are we gonna grow as a quartet? How do we get better at rehearsing? And how do we really listen in and understand our differences, like individually in the group and like when people are switched, like how that's affecting leading in like the most simple way. I don't know how you guys feel too. I mean, first is like pretty different. Yeah.
I think it's a different for me. It's a different kind of like it's like psychologically the most different. It's not more responsibility in any way because I could like quietly ruin a concert sitting second violin, you know, like I could just like without no one knowing, I could like
I would
do
know.
yeah. Except for my inner voice partner and Russell sitting next to me wondering
I would, if she did it, I would think I did it.
yeah, like you know, there's so many like it's like all psychological and like being first. Sometimes I could use it against me against the group in a way where I just do whatever I want because like I am the face of the music for most of the melodic parts. So I feel like I could be free and like yo you gotta catch me or you know. But at the end of the day, like the way we work, and it's kind of like if you had like a soccer field and you just like had like positions. I guess the violins are at a point where like we are having to switch positions and understand both roles very well for like you know to just to like win the game all the time. It doesn't matter. So so it keeps us on like a more like physical kind of shape and like kind of that kind of thing, and then it keeps the lower voices in the shape of like understanding the field play like very much differently every time you get a different partner on whatever part you're playing. I think we just like that kind of if it's a challenge, if you want to say it's a challenge, it's a little bit of a challenge, but we like that kind of activity because the way we communicate within the group is so I think it's very thoughtful. It's not just like look at a part and you play the viola part and you're just playing the viola part. It's like I'm playing the viola part with Angela on first versus I'm playing the viola part with Justin on first. That makes you take care of the score a particular that kind of added activity and thought and the commitment actually makes us feel like and we know that it does make the music come alive very much like the way we want to.
Right.
And there's really something to that people underestimate how difficult playing second violin is, because really you have to take so much into account to do it well. And that's what
Yeah.
Angela's talking about, because no one will know that you are the person kind of, making the group sound out of tune or unbalanced or
Yeah.
affecting the way someone else is playing their solo. But that's your responsibility. And then the other thing that I think the biggest kind of change that I've had in developing both roles over the years is that it's very easy for me when I'm playing first to listen to myself too much and not listen to the rest of the group enough. And then vice
Mm,
versa, playing second violin, it's very easy to just listen to the rest of the group and not be aware of what's coming out of your instrument. And so, like, that's not always 100% true, but like that's definitely like the thing that to me is the most different about the way I see the challenges of it, having done the switching for a while.
mm,
One of the real like joys of being in a quartet for like a really, really long time, I think, is that like, when you first start the group, there's sort of like roles that each instrument kind of steps into. Like the first
yeah.
violin, obviously, is the first violin, second violin, viola, it's like the inner voice
Obviously.
thing, and the you know what I mean?
What's the
Like and
What's
the
the cello?
the cello's like playing this like kind of supporting like underneath kind of bass role like of kind of just always I always say in the coachings and stuff that I give that it's like a moving walkway, sort of like you're just like providing like ground or foundation. But I think like as we've been in the quartet longer and longer, I remember we had this coaching with Ian Swenson where he like talked a lot about how none of those roles really have to be fixed. So I think that having the switching violins and like being able to explore kind of more, I guess, fluidity in like the role that you provide in the quartet and being able to explore your own voice as like anything could be anything at any time, like
Mm,
kind of makes for a really fun, like creative space. Like I don't just have to be, in that coaching he gave me a little thing, a whole speech about how like, oh, you're so strong. Look at you, you're holding down the floor, and like he's like, as the cellist in a quartet, you don't always have to be the one providing stability. You don't always have to
mm,
be the person grounding the thing. You actually can be like instigating some sort of chaos. You can be like kind
yeah.
of floating on the top. You can be anything you want to, and I think that was kind of really freeing in a lot of
Mm,
ways, and it's really fun getting to like explore all of that.
mm, yeah. And Ben, I really love that you guys or that you shared that you guys played Bach chorales. That's I mean, you said you don't perform them, but I think you guys should do it as encores, honestly. I mean
We did perform a chorale recently. We had a request to play this Schumann chorale that
Oh.
was for piano in the style of Bach, and it's a little
Mm,
less sophisticated, honestly, than the Bach. So I think it was harder to pull off for an audience than a Bach chorale would have been.
mm,
But definitely, it's you have so many options in terms of what you could do with the chorales, and
mm,
what the way we've approached it is as the years have gone on, we've actually gone much more in the direction of always playing them very slow and non-vib, but then there's a
mm,
million things you could work on even within those parameters. But in theory,
right.
a group could play them at many different tempos with and without vibrato, work on all of these kinds of things. But the reason that we have this kind of blank slate of that being the thing is that's the common denominator. And then every day you're sensing the difference of everybody when they walk into the room and first touch the instrument, you can sense kind of where everybody's at, and then
Mhm.
work on a variety of things that are applicable to your pieces based off of that set of parameters.
Yeah.
One kind of silly thing is we play off the same set of chorales that we've been doing, which is we have like 24 chorales that were arranged for, I think, the American Viola Society,
Yeah.
like a
Mm,
magazine article.
mm,
And we have never actually found the article. We should like really look at that up because like we've basically used it as like a space to kind of explore whatever we want, and like it really walks you through like in a very sophisticated way like how each chorale is a little bit different, and like it took us like a while of actually learning them to really see the differences and like read polyphony in a very specific
mm,
way, but we really stuck with that because it was so easy to read and it was on IMSLP, and I didn't have to read like tenor clef or bass clef, and like it was like nice and simple. But I
Mm,
think there's like we're getting to that point now where it's like having more variety would be like nice, and we've like kind of started using the chorales very much so like not necessarily as etudes, but as like this kind of very free space to like try things out and really understand things in different ways. And
sure.
that's been like immensely helpful to just like understanding each other, as I kind of was talking about before. I mean, if you look, the Cortara rod have like the best kind of like plethora of it. They have like, I don't know, 30 or something already recorded up on YouTube. And
Mm,
like we play them about the same speed they do for most of them. And kind of we also play totally non-vid now. We started kind of there's one recording of us on Instagram playing it like right before the pandemic. It was like the
mm,
last thing we recorded. And we're like vibrating and like really playing crazy gesturally because it was just like
mm.
fun. And I
Yeah.
think the more we play them, the more we actually like find how to make them more singing, how to really connect like with what he's written and make that polyphony come across like
Mm,
in the most simple, like beautiful way. And
mm,
like it's kind of crazy how simple you can make it and how
yeah.
clear, and it becomes pretty amazing how you can really hear voicing and start to like read voicing all four parts because we all play off score for most of our pieces now. So it's like
Okay.
we're starting to be able to like totally read all four parts at the same time, which is
Mm,
pretty awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have anything.